The Strüngmann family fits most strongly into the category of professionals turned investors. Their fortune emerged from technical expertise, disciplined pharmaceutical execution, and a rare ability to transition from operators into long-term strategic investors. Over time, the family evolved from German pharmaceutical entrepreneurs into one of the most influential private biotech investment dynasties in Europe. The story begins in post-war Germany, where twin brothers Thomas Strüngmann and Andreas Strüngmann grew up during a period when the German economy was rebuilding itself through manufacturing, chemicals, engineering, and pharmaceuticals. Their father was a physician, and medicine became an early influence inside the household. Unlike many wealthy industrial families that passed businesses down through generations, the brothers entered the pharmaceutical world through education, technical understanding, and commercial execution rather than inheritance. Germany, during the second half of the 20th century, had one of the strongest pharmaceutical infrastructures in Europe. Large companies such as Bayer, Merck KGaA, and Boehringer Ingelheim dominated major areas of medicine. But the market also left room for aggressive regional pharmaceutical distributors and generic drug companies. The Strüngmann brothers recognized this opportunity early. Their careers initially developed through hands-on pharmaceutical work rather than high finance. They learned how drug distribution functioned, how physician relationships were built, how pricing worked across Europe, and how regulation shaped the economics of medicine. They developed operational knowledge from the ground level upward. This became one of the defining characteristics of the family empire. The brothers were not primarily inventors or celebrity founders. They became specialists in pharmaceutical commercialization and scaling. In the 1980s, they acquired and expanded Hexal, a German generic drug company. At the time, generic medicines were becoming increasingly important across Europe, as governments attempted to reduce healthcare spending and expand access to affordable drugs. This was not the glamorous side of pharmaceuticals. Generic medicine required operational efficiency, manufacturing discipline, regulatory expertise, and aggressive distribution networks. Margins could be thin, competition intense, and scale mattered enormously. The brothers excelled in exactly that kind of environment. Hexal operated by producing generic versions of established drugs after patent expirations. The business model depended on speed, regulatory timing, physician relationships, pharmacy penetration, manufacturing quality, and cost control. Success required understanding not only chemistry and medicine, but also logistics, reimbursement systems, insurance structures, and government healthcare policy. The Strüngmann brothers built Hexal into one of the most powerful generic pharmaceutical companies in Germany through relentless operational expansion. They invested heavily into manufacturing capability, distribution systems, and regional market penetration. Rather than behaving like speculative biotech entrepreneurs chasing one breakthrough product, they operated more like disciplined industrial builders. This distinction mattered enormously later in their careers. The brothers became known for being analytical, private, methodical, and financially disciplined. They rarely sought public attention. Their reputation inside Germany became centered around competence and execution rather than branding. Over time, Hexal expanded internationally and benefited from broader structural trends inside healthcare. Governments increasingly encouraged generic substitution to lower costs. Aging populations increased pharmaceutical consumption. Patent expirations opened massive new markets for generic manufacturers. Regulatory harmonization across Europe improved scalability. The brothers understood how to industrialize pharmaceutical replication and distribution at scale. By the early 2000s, Hexal had become one of Europe's major generic pharmaceutical companies. In 2005, the defining financial event of the family's history occurred when the Strüngmann brothers sold Hexal to Novartis for approximately $6.7 billion. The timing of the sale was extraordinarily important. Global pharmaceutical consolidation was accelerating, and major multinational drug companies were racing to strengthen their generic divisions before healthcare systems worldwide intensified cost pressures. Novartis wanted to expand Sandoz, its generic drug subsidiary, and Hexal represented both market share and operational infrastructure. For the Strüngmann brothers, the sale transformed them from wealthy operators into one of Europe's largest pharmaceutical investment families almost overnight. But the sale did not remove them from healthcare. In many dynasties, a massive liquidity event becomes the beginning of fragmentation. Families disperse into passive investing, luxury lifestyles, or unrelated ventures. The Strüngmann brothers, instead, became even more strategically involved in healthcare and biotechnology. After the acquisition, Thomas Strüngmann joined Sandoz, where he oversaw regional operations across Germany, the Americas, and the Middle East. This period deepened the family's understanding of global pharmaceutical markets and multinational healthcare operations. It also expanded their institutional relationships across biotech, pharma manufacturing, regulation, and investment circles. At the same time, the brothers began reorganizing themselves into long-term investors through Santo Holding and later through their family office structure, Athos Service. Athos Service became the operational nerve center of the Strüngmann empire. Rather than functioning as a passive wealth preservation office, Athos operated more like a highly specialized healthcare investment institution. The family office coordinated biotechnology investments, strategic acquisitions, portfolio management, governance oversight, and long-term capital allocation across the brothers' expanding network of healthcare and industrial holdings. The structure allowed the brothers to centralize decision-making while maintaining privacy and long-term control. Instead of relying entirely on outside investment funds or public market managers, Athos Service enabled the family to deploy capital directly into sectors where they possessed deep operational expertise. The office became particularly focused on biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, medical technology, diagnostics, and healthcare infrastructure. This helped the family maintain coherence across its empire, while still operating with the flexibility of a private investment group. Over time, Athos evolved into one of the most influential healthcare-focused family offices in Europe. Its approach reflected the same characteristics that defined Hexal decades earlier: patience, technical understanding, concentrated conviction, and operational discipline. This transition from operators to capital allocators became one of the most important strategic evolutions in the family's history. Unlike many family offices that diversify broadly into real estate, luxury assets, or passive funds, the Strüngmann brothers largely remained within areas where they possessed deep technical understanding. Healthcare, biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, medical technology, and related infrastructure remained central to their strategy. Their investments reflected long-term conviction rather than short-term speculation. In 2004, through Santo Holding, the brothers acquired nearly 90% of Südwest Bank from DZ Bank. This showed their willingness to move beyond pharmaceuticals into financial infrastructure and institutional ownership. In 2017, they later sold the bank to BioTech. They also moved aggressively into industrial and healthcare technology assets. In 2014, Santo Holding partnered with EQT to acquire Siemens Audiology Solutions for roughly €2.2 billion. The hearing aid and audiology market fit many themes the brothers understood well: aging demographics, healthcare demand growth, medical technology integration, and long-term recurring demand. But the most important investment in the family's history came in biotechnology. In 2008, the Strüngmann brothers made what became one of the most successful biotech investments in European history when they provided approximately €136.5 million to support the founding of BioNTech. At the time, messenger RNA technology was still highly experimental. Most investors considered it scientifically interesting, but commercially uncertain. BioNTech was founded by Oor Shahin and Özlem Ricci, researchers deeply focused on immunology and cancer therapeutics. The science was ambitious, expensive, and risky. The Strüngmann brothers understood both the technical challenges and the commercial possibilities better than many traditional financiers, because they had spent decades inside pharmaceutical systems. This is one of the most important themes in the family's story. Their success was not based on random venture bets. It came from combining operational pharmaceutical experience with long-term patient capital. They could evaluate not only scientific potential, but also manufacturing scalability, regulatory viability, commercialization pathways, and industry timing. The BioNTech investment required extraordinary patience. Messenger RNA therapies took years to develop, and the company spent much of its early existence focused primarily on oncology and immunotherapy research. For many years, BioNTech remained largely unknown outside biotech circles. Then the global pandemic changed everything. When COVID-19 emerged, BioNTech rapidly partnered with Pfizer to develop one of the first successful messenger RNA vaccines in history. The vaccine transformed BioNTech into one of the most important biotechnology companies in the world almost overnight. The Strüngmann brothers reportedly earned roughly $8 billion from their BioNTech stake, while continuing to retain substantial ownership in the company. Their holdings in BioNTech, combined with their broader healthcare investments and decades of pharmaceutical wealth creation, elevated the brothers into the position of having the largest healthcare earned fortune in Germany and among the largest healthcare fortunes in Europe. That distinction is important because their wealth was built almost entirely through healthcare operations, pharmaceutical commercialization, and biotechnology investing rather than inheritance, natural resources, or financial engineering. The fortune emerged from decades spent building, scaling, selling, and reinvesting within the healthcare ecosystem itself. But the significance of the BioNTech investment went beyond money. The BioNTech success validated the family's broader investment philosophy. Deep sector knowledge, long-time horizons, technical understanding, disciplined capital deployment, and concentrated conviction could outperform broader financial markets dramatically. Unlike many wealthy families that become increasingly passive over generations, the Strüngmann brothers remained highly engaged in healthcare innovation. They also maintained significant ownership stakes in companies such as 4SC and Immatics, continuing their involvement in immunotherapy and oncology-related biotechnology. One notable feature of the Strüngmann family is how private they remained, despite becoming among the wealthiest healthcare investors in Europe. They rarely cultivated celebrity status. They avoided the highly public philanthropic branding strategies used by some billionaire families. Their public image stayed closely tied to healthcare, science, and disciplined investment management rather than luxury or politics. This privacy likely contributed to the family's institutional stability. The brothers also avoided one of the common weaknesses of large dynasties: excessive fragmentation into unrelated industries. While they diversified selectively into banking and industrial assets, healthcare remained the central organizing principle of the empire. That focus preserved coherence across generations and investments. There is also evidence that the family culture emphasized education, professionalism, and competence rather than entitlement. Much like other German industrial families, the Strüngmann approach appears heavily influenced by technical credibility and disciplined management culture. Success inside their ecosystem depended on capability and long-term thinking rather than public visibility. Unlike dynasties where heirs inherit symbolic ownership while professional managers run everything, the Strüngmann empire remained closely connected to active strategic oversight. Even as outside executives operated portfolio companies, the family retained influence through concentrated ownership, board relationships, and healthcare expertise. The evolution of the family also reflects larger changes inside global capitalism. The first phase of wealth creation came through industrial pharmaceutical scaling during the rise of generics. The second phase came through strategic exits and multinational consolidation. The third phase came through venture-style biotechnology investing and platform science. In many ways, the family adapted from industrial operators into scientific capital allocators. That transition is difficult. Many first-generation entrepreneurs fail when industries evolve technologically. The Strüngmann brothers instead repositioned themselves alongside the future of biotechnology. Today, the family remains one of the most influential healthcare investment dynasties in Europe. Their wealth is tied not only to BioNTech, but also to broader biotechnology, pharmaceutical, diagnostics, medical technology, and healthcare infrastructure investments managed through Athos Service and related entities. The brothers continue to represent a hybrid model, somewhere between operators, investors, and stewards. They are no longer running a manufacturing-driven generic pharmaceutical company day to day, but they remain deeply embedded in the healthcare innovation ecosystem through their family office structure, board relationships, ownership stakes, and long-term investment strategy. The long-term success of the Strüngmann family came from several reinforcing traits operating together over decades. They developed deep industry expertise before becoming investors. They understood operational reality rather than purely financial theory. They stayed concentrated within sectors they genuinely understood. They maintained patience during long scientific development cycles. They preserved private control while avoiding excessive public exposure. And they evolved with the pharmaceutical industry instead of remaining trapped in one business model. Their story is ultimately less about a single breakthrough and more about institutional evolution. The family began inside the mechanics of generic drug distribution, expanded through pharmaceutical industrialization, accumulated enormous capital through strategic exits, and then redeployed that capital into the future of biotechnology itself. In doing so, the Strüngmann family transformed from pharmaceutical operators into long-term architects of modern healthcare investing.